All right. So,
The month of March felt like it just went whoosh.
it, yeah, there is nothing normal lately. Nothing at all. But this should be a fun show. This guy talks about some of my favorite subjects all the time. So,
Yeah, he's an expert on several of your favorite subjects.
mhm. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But anyway, so what I think is while we wait for the time, maybe we'll talk about some news.
Ooh, I didn't find any weird news this week. I'm sure that there's lots out there.
So let me just pull up. So as I go throughout my day, if I see something funny, I I snatch it up. So Ghislaine Maxwell, Ghislaine, I don't know what her name is, but
She's infamous.
now this is coming from the Blaze, but it popped across my radar, and she is being charged.
Yes, I saw that.
So she's been jailed for 9 months on the allegations of facilitating grossness. But it sounds like an indictment is coming down. She was charged, I think, 2 Mondays ago, um, with sex trafficking of a minor. So she's actually getting it. Sex trafficking of a minor, of a 14-year-old. And as far as I know, there are no states. I hope there are no states where
14 is legal age.
not just 14 is legal age, but where you can take a 14-year-old to an adult man and uh and give her to him,
Mm.
right? I hope not. I am not going to do that research. I do not want to do that research. But yeah, so Ghislaine has been charged.
Did
Now,
you hear all the crazy things about her time that's been spent there? Like she said that she wasn't being treated nicely.
treated
Ghislaine,
nicely.
prison isn't Club Med, Ghislaine. And then her food wasn't correct. She wasn't
All
getting
right. Well,
the correct food.
LA is here. Yeah, I think that's. How are you doing?
I'm good. I guess we had all of our signals crossed.
It happens when you're talking across the country and
There you go.
getting everything aligned. But all right, so we got L.A. Marzulli on. Now, did I say that correctly? L.A. Marzulli?
Correct. Thank you. Yes.
Awesome.
I said it correctly.
Way to go, bud.
This is the first time ever. But yeah, so you have a very interesting research that you do where you dig into ancient mounds, and it sounds, from most of the videos I watch, it sounds like it's down around South America, Peru and what have you. But you come across a theory of the Nephilim, and well, that's one of my favorite subjects. So if I can, I'd like you to just take it away.
Well, yeah, I've traveled extensively and will continue to do so once this goofy COVID.
Yeah.
Don't get me going on that.
Yeah.
Once this, and
Let's not ruin a show.
We know people who have died from it, so I'm not saying it's not real. But with the lockdowns and everything else, and the travel, and who knows where this is going. But the latest film is called Lost Civilizations, and in it, we take the viewer to Gilgal Raphaim, the Wheel of the Giants, a large circle, 42,000 tons of basalt rocks heaped up in the 5 concentric rings, and there's a burial chamber there. And we went into the burial chamber. Mondo Gonzalez, our lead archaeologist, and I went into the burial chamber, and The burial chamber is, and we've seen this repeated on Malta, Sardinia. It's pretty much everywhere. They build these chambers, and then the initiate goes into the chamber to contact the spirit of the Nephilim. The giant is probably buried 15 to 20 feet down, and that's never been excavated. Now, that's conjecture on my part, but that's not the tomb. The 5 concentric rings and that chamber is not the tomb. The tomb is below, just like the tomb of the giant in Sardinia. So we first go to Gilgal Raphaim, and we hop over to Norba, Italy. We go to Sardinia. We go to Malta, and then, of course, Peru. And meanwhile, we tag team back and forth to America Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. So we're all over the globe, and that's only part one. Part two, we'll pick up on Karnak, Salisbury Hill, and many other sites. I mean, that we haven't, we were over there in 2019, and I'm just getting to it now. That's the kind of backlog we have. So I try to edit 2 to 3 films a year. And this new series is called On the Trail of the Nephilim. There are 7 installments in that. And we go everywhere. And we'll continue to go everywhere because we're on the trail.
Now, you say were these humans that went in there to contact the spirit? Was it like an ancient cult or religion that worshiped the Nephilim?
Well, this is what they did. And they did it over here. And they did it in the island of, where was it that we saw the same type of thing? Sardinia. Almost identical. There's a chamber within the chamber where someone can lay down. And we saw that at American Stonehenge. There's a hidden chamber that's underneath another chamber right across from the sacrificial table. And that chamber is big enough, large enough for, a grown man to lay in. And that's what all this is about. It's about acquiring the power of these disembodied entities known as the Nephilim.
That's interesting to talk about a religion involving the Nephilim. I haven't ever thought of it from that angle before. We've talked about red-headed giants, which I think personally have a tie into that, the Native American red-headed giants of like Lovelock Cave and what have you.
Absolutely, no doubt. I've been to Lovelock, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely no doubt. There's a definite connection.
So, what's your theory on what the Nephilim are? Are they the children of angels and man that kind of, because of their size and their intellect, they kind of ruled until the flood, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, the new book is called Countermove: How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood. So we get into the idea that, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, the days of the flood, but also afterwards, when the sons of God, basically read fallen angels, took women, married them, went into them in the biblical sense, and birthed these, not only were they giants, but there's other species that in other words, there's different tribes that seem to connote different genetic characteristics. The elongated skulls in Paracas is a perfect example of something that's not human. There's just no way that thing's human. Based on all of our study, we're the only team that did the DNA testing on it. UCLA supposedly did it, but we asked for the information. There is none. We tested all those skulls down there. No, you didn't. Where's the information? It's not there. And the reason why we're blacklisted is because they didn't like, this is science, right? Science.
Yeah.
We go to science leads us. Bull-ticky. No, you don't. Science is your religion, and you have a little paradigm. And anything that might shatter that paradigm or gets in the way of it, not so fast, citizen. You crush it. You crush it, which is what happened to us. Our work on the DNA on the Paracas skulls, specifically, there was, I think, 58 samples that we took from 18 different skulls. All right? That's a really good study. 18 different skulls, 58 samples. Out of the 58 samples, about 28 of them sequenced. The sequence showed, many of the sequences showed a Middle Eastern / European connection.
So it had
some
like
human.
So it had a genetic marker in there from the Middle East, from the
mitochondrial DNA comes from the female side of the equation. We've never been able to get nuclear DNA. Never been able to get it. And
how?
So the fact the fact that the mitochondrial coming from the human woman show Middle Eastern. I mean, I was doing a dancing 5 feet off the ground. This is my wheelhouse. This has been our hypothesis with the Nephilim skulls since we first heard about them in 2013, that these were not the result of cranial deformation. They were, in fact, genetic. And episode 6 of On the Trail of a Nephilim, which basically is 6 years of footage, and then culminating in all the testing. It's somewhat academic, but you can follow along in it. And we talk to surgeons and medical doctors and archaeologists, anthropologists, all about what we discovered. And they come on the record and basically say that whatever this is something genetic. This is another species. It's something that's genetic. It has nothing to do with cranial deformation or cranial headboarding. So you would think that academics would be going, wow, this is really cool. No.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this over and over and over again. They are the most closed-minded people on the planet. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in their goofy little paradigm of Darwinism.
So did you start along that same line, that Darwinism theory that everyone's taught, and then just follow the evidence?
No, I railed against Darwinism from the get-go, even before I was a Christian. Before, when I heard about it in high school, I was kind of going, what? How am I buying this, guys? It's like, you guys are just making this stuff up. And I'm a kid of about 13 or 14, but I mean, I just wasn't buying it. And the more I studied it, the more just absurd it became. I mean, when you think about just the human anatomy, we're supposed to believe that over billions of years, it's like this trial and error thing where evolution and it's mindless. Well, let me get this straight. Right now, all three of us are looking at each other on monitors. Just think of the complexity of the eye. How does it translate to a brain? Think of language. Think of the tongue. Think of the fact that you're hearing, that your ears have little eardrums in there that pick up the sound waves, and your brain simultaneously translates what I'm saying. Hello? And we're supposed to believe that we're descended from pond scum? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. There's no way. We are created. We were created in God's image, and we are highly complex human beings. I mean, absolutely. Think of the female reproduction system. Our daughter just had our first grandchild. I mean,
congratulations.
It's just like, twang, this, and I'm going to go off on a rail here. I'll probably get fired for this. But this whole transgender thing where the guy, his Bobby thinks he's Barbara, so he wants to race against the girls. First of all, we should have a separate category for transgender people. So, you guys, if that's what you want to do in your
100%.
life, that's, do what you want to do. That's okay. We're not judging you, but good luck. That's all we got to say. There's no way watching my daughter give birth, after 24 hours of excruciating labor, she did it at home with a doula and a midwife. And I was privileged. They allowed me to watch the baby actually come out. Now, my wife had 2 C-sections, so I've never seen it. And I just sat there just kind of going, oh my gosh, are you flipping kidding me? How does this work? I mean, how does this work? It's just totally beyond anything I can even comprehend. And it's sacred. It's absolutely sacred, the fact that women are life bearers. I mean, women have been pushed down and in some societies still. I mean, you go to India or you go to most Muslim countries, women are chattel. They're second-class citizens. And the great lie in our country, I'm way off on a tangent here, but that's okay. Welcome to my head. So the great lie, I think, was where, a woman can have it all. She can, get that baby and then go right back into the workforce. Wait a minute, time out. I was at a conference and there was a new mother feeding her infant in the back row. Very modestly, she had a blanket draped over her and she was breastfeeding the baby. And I stopped in the middle of what I was saying because my eye caught it. I just said, I want you to just look at something. Let's not embarrass her. Let's not oogle and ogle. But do you want to see something sacred? You want to see what the sacred really is? Turn around and look at this mother breastfeeding her child. Just look at that. That's sacred. And our society and other societies have maligned this and made it look like staying home is inferior. Well, no, it's not. You know, somebody has to raise the baby, and guess what? The 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 human being with the milk producing machinery already attached to it, that's got my vote all day long. And that's a miracle in itself. I mean, how does that work? Well, let me see. We're going to evolution's up there, kind of going. Well, you know, we're going to have children, so somebody's going to have to feed it. Wait a minute. Evolution doesn't do that because it's mindless.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Too many leaps for it to make sense.
Way too many leaps.
Yeah.
And you talk to some of these guys, and they're just, you know, Charlie Darwin, absolutely. In the ultraviolet gold, we see the explosion of life here in the Cretaceous, and they're all just different, just coming out of nowhere. So it's absolutely incredible, all because of this one single cell amoeba, and it's just mind-boggling. Nonsense. You know, it's just Dr. Leakey in the ultraviolet gorge. I mean, I watched that when I was a kid. I loved it because he was such a character. And, you know, it's like, here I am standing in front of 50 million years. Time? How do you know it's 50 million years? You're just making this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. Quit lying to me.
I like the voices.
I haven't even eaten dinner yet.
I like the voices. Well, you said that the Nephilim either came back or were reintroduced. Do you think that it was
second incursion suicide mission? That's what the whole new book's about.
So do you think it was like the Nephilim left and then came back, like they had technology or something?
No, they were drowned in the flood, but disembodied spirits of the Nephilim become the demons that wander the earth, but the fallen angels can pop in and out. So the fallen angels come back after the flood and do a second suicide mission.
So they just do it again.
It's a suicide mission, but they do it anyway because that's all they have.
How is it a suicide mission for them?
Because they know they're going to wind up in jail. When you actually go, the nexus of the countermove book came from reading Book of Enoch and knowing this one chapter by heart. Shemnazi is on Mount Hermon in Israel. You can go there. And at the mountain of the oath, that's what it means. And he's standing there and he's going, I fear that the other 200 Watcher angels will indeed agree not to do this thing, and I alone shall bear the penalty of this great sin. He knows exactly what they're going to do. And so all the angels, they take an oath. Mount Hermon being Mount of the Oath. They take an oath to do this thing. Why? Because it's the only shot they have. They know that someone's going to come and take the dragon's kingdom away from them. This is all prophecy. They know that. That's in stone. Someone is coming, the seed of the woman, the offspring of the woman, someone is going to come from that and crush the head of the dragon. Well, they don't like that. The dragon doesn't like that. The dragon wants to hold on to his kingdom. So what are they going to do? They're going to contaminate the bloodline. And they basically do that, except for 8 people that get aboard the ark. And then you read that scripture and it says, Noah, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives. Everybody's clean. Noah is pure in all his generations. And they hop on the ark and they begin to repopulate the earth. Well, fallen angels see this. And that's what the whole Tower of Babel's about. That's what Sodom and Gomorrah is about. That's what the Nephilim tribes that are in the Levant are about. That's what the 400 years where the children of Israel go down and are slaves to the Egyptians until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. This is a 3-hour conversation. This is like decades and decades of study. But it's a timeline. And you see all this stuff happen, and it's mind-boggling. Well, you know, Jesus tells us it'll be like the days of Noah when he returns. What does that mean? Like the days of Noah when he returns. Well,
the lead off was chaos. I mean, the world was going to chaos. According to the scriptures, the world was going to chaos. And then to cure the chaos, there was a flood.
Well, there was genetic inbreeding to the point where everyone had taken the seed of the serpent, essentially.
So the Nephilim got in and just made sure that at every
the genome
until they were in every population until they're
pretty much, except for the 8 people whose generations were clean. So here's the deal: when we jump into the modern day UFO phenomenon, which by the way I've written many books on it, talk about it incessantly because I'm looking for a unified theory, and that's why it all makes sense to me. Well, the abduction phenomenon mirrors what happened in the days of Noah. It's so similar, except there's no marriage contract. The women are taken, ovum is taken from the female, sperm from the man, and they create a hybrid. How do I know hybrids? I mean, we've had too many people come up to me at conferences telling me their bone-chilling story about their encounter with a hybrid. I never want to see one, but they're walking the earth. Dr. David Jacobs, his last book, Walking Among Us. We interviewed him for our Watchers series. I interviewed him for one of my books, Further Evidence. So it's all connected like this. It's all connected.
That's a tie-in. James, our local UFOologist, he says Anunnaki possibly, and that could be a name given.
The Anunnaki and the fallen angels are exactly the same.
Okay.
It's the same people. And it drives New Age people when I tell them that, but there's no difference. The Anunnaki, they're always depicted with the wings. You're looking at fallen angels.
So that makes sense to me.
So Anu could be Azazel and
Azazel, right.
And Enlil and Enlil could be the what were the two angels under Azazel?
Semyazi for one.
Yeah, and one started with an M. But yeah, so that's wild stuff. So it could be just a different interpretation, just a language barrier telling the same story.
That's all it is, in my opinion. And what drives me nuts about the ancient aliens, ancient astronauts, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I get that. Well, what if they're not astronauts at all? What if they're fallen angels? That's why when I go to all these sites like Sacsayhuaman or sites in Malta, and what we show is what I term to call Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology, because that's what it is. You can't duplicate the stuff that's there. You can't. When you go to a place like Ollantaytambo in Peru, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You go to Sacsayhuaman, 40, 60, 80 ton stones, polygonal shape, placed. How did they move them? And these goofy guides, the Inca were master stone builders, and they built all these things. Well, how do they move the stones? Well, we haven't quite figured that out yet. Well, maybe your whole theory is flipping bogus, because the Inca themselves say that to the Spanish, we didn't build this. It was here when we got here. And we see this over and over and over again. Just like Corral in Peru, that's in the new film. The oldest settlement in the Americas. It's over 5,000 years old. Well, advanced mathematics, knowledge of an 18-and-a-half-year metonic lunar cycle, knowledge of the equinoxes, knowledge of the solstices, advanced mathematics, advanced building techniques, all right? And it all just goes pop, it appears out of nowhere. There's no pre-existing culture that goes, well, maybe we should make this pointed thing. I don't know what to call it. We'll give it maybe 4 sides. What's 4? I don't know, 1, 2, 3, right? So you got engineering, advanced mathematics, and we're talking advanced mathematics. And it all just goes poof out of nowhere. It just rises up in Corral, Peru, and I've been there 3 different times, and it's always a mind boggler. You just sit there and you go, what? And then the archaeologists will go, well, there must have been a famine, which is why these people abandoned the area. That they say the same thing for everything. Now you're in Ohio. Well, we must have had a famine because that's why they abandoned the area. You go over to Malta. We're not sure why these people abandoned the area, but more than likely it was a famine. It's just like
well, yeah.
Well, and the precision of some of these places, we can't today replicate. Yeah. So it's insane to think that, with stone tools and things that they were able to.
When we show our mysterious mathematical mysteries of the mound builders, it's the second in the series. The first Amateur of the Nephilim series is called Mysterious Mound Builders. And what we did is we show a docent at a place called Fort Ancient in Ohio. And he's telling about the 3.5 miles of continuous earthen walls, which create Fort Ancient. It's 3.5 miles of continuous earthen walls with 66 gates. Now, they'll say it's 67. We say nonsense, it's 66, and we all know why. And that, once again, that Fort Ancient was abandoned.
because of famine.
Probably due to famine, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Well,
Always the answer.
is
So this docent, and we show this in the film. He's going like, so what does this mean to you? Well, we call this the Hopewell Indians, and they had primitive digging sticks and stone tools and all this other stuff. And he goes, if we were to deconstruct the 3.5 miles of earthen walls and load them up in dump trucks, okay, how many dump trucks do you think you have? Just take a guess.
I don't know.
how thick are the walls?
They're about some of them are 20 to 30 feet high.
Oh my
20, 30
gosh.
feet high. To get repose, they would have to be 20 feet thick for the 30-foot high one. So you'd probably get, per dump truck, you'd probably get a linear foot of wall. So all the dump trucks. Yeah, that'd be a lot.
Yeah.
They calculate it as bumper to bumper, end to end dump trucks for 200 miles.
Oh, easy. Very easy. Because at 20 feet high, if you're going just for repose, you'd probably have to go 15 feet thick. So that would be one dump truck for a linear foot, for 1 foot of wall. And you'd have to have a dump truck for another foot. Now, granted, where you put a gate in, you could negate dump trucks. But other than that.
And you have to, it's a different time. They're hunting for food. They're cultivating for food. They got better things to do than 44 million basket loads of dirt.
Now,
That's exactly what it is.
is that mound that was up by St. Louis that was found in
That's Cahokia. That's a different
Cahokia?
mound. That's the largest mound in the Americas.
Yeah. Now,
It's the same nonsense.
now, does it fall under these mounds, these groups?
Yeah, they say it's the Hopewell culture, but see, they don't even know who the Hopewell. It's a made up name. Hopewell was a farmer who had discovered the artifacts. We'll call this entire culture the Hopewell people.
Didn't he discover them while they're
I want a culture.
they're building a road next to his farm, and he's just out kind of kicking dirt?
Yeah, and
Pissed
next
off.
thing you know, it's like you have an entire civilization named after you, my good man. So it's like
So
let me get to the kickoff. So in our film, we hired a flint napper, and he made us a replica of a stone age hoe. Right, handles about 3 feet long. Beautiful stone tool, work really well. So we hire a fit laborer. We take him out to where the mound dirt would have come from, a barrow pit, and he starts digging with this thing.
oh my gosh.
It's hysterical. And then he gathers up the dirt with his hands, because there's no shovels, puts it in the bucket, would have been a deer skin. And then he walks, let's say 150 yards, 200 yards, to where the mound is. And he takes the dirt bucket and he dumps it like this, and he dumps it with his feet. By this time, the audience is howling with laughter. And then we show how many buckets it would have taken to build, let's say, Fort Ancient. We're looking at 28 single buckets, 28 million single buckets. Do the math, folks.
They would have starved building these. They would have starved.
Well,
The
we did-
entire civilization. Oh, that's how they went out.
We did mention
it wasn't famine.
Exactly.
Now, back to the red-headed giants of Lovelock Cave. They seemed primitive. They were called reed eaters, and they did make shoes. They made shoes out of reeds. The reeds that they.
I've seen them. They're still very, very large.
They're large,
Very
but
large.
they're still quite primitive. Do you think that was a I don't know, maybe a vegan hippie group that peeled off from the more technological advanced, or maybe the outcasts?
They were cannibals, first off.
Yeah,
That's
they ate their own. They ate anything.
They're in a fixed state. They're sexually deviant. They rob, kill, and destroy. I mean, that's their modus operandi.
But do you think that they were still a greater part of the other Nephilim, or they were kind of outcasts of them also?
That's conjecture. I have no idea. All I know is that Sitika, they were chased into a cave. I've been to the cave. You can see the blackened roof. And get this, Joe Taylor, M.K. Davis, and one other gentleman, forgive me for not remembering, they were there and they were snooping around. There's no, you got to bring a flashlight. And on the wall, nobody goes back there. So they're snooping around because everything's been blasted. So it used to be 2 caves that went back. You can't go in there anymore. It's all completely gone.
Mm.
So they're looking and they discover this enormous giant handprint on the wall, right? So
Like the
MK
hand
Davis,
art?
it's like the hand is like, it's like 3 times the size of my hand. He's got a big Bowie knife and he puts the Bowie knife next to it to show you how big this thing is. Well, he put it up on Facebook, mistake number 1.
Yeah.
By the time I got there, like a month and a half later, someone had come in and erased it. It's no longer there.
Or defaced it.
Chipped off, acid washed off. We don't know, but it was gone. So
We have
pictures of it.
We have some petroglyphs out here that commonly get shot at and destroyed, and there's a couple of them.
But that was likely to maintain the narrative.
It could be. It could be. Well, I mean, you hear stories all the time about how the Smithsonian
Received giants.
They grab artifacts, not just giants, but any artifact. I mean, they'll grab artifacts where you have the elongated skulls down in Peru. If they find something like that up here in the States, you hear that the Smithsonian goes there and, oh, wow, neat, boxes it up, runs away, and then erases history of it. And I wonder, I mean, that leads you down a lot of different paths. Like, is the Smithsonian afraid of a narrative getting out? Are they covering up for...
Yeah, because the Smithsonian are promulgating the Darwinian theory.
Yeah.
Well,
it's hard to say, oh, we were so wrong.
Or
you can't do that now after 150 years. Right?
Yeah.
Or is the Smithsonian a part of... So if the Nephilim are here, and if they're getting in, and if they're corrupting humanity, is the Smithsonian an organization within that corruption?
Let me just give you an example, all right, of the way things work. So a friend of mine wrote a book called Mysterious Catalina, Jim Watson. And Jim lives out on Catalina Island. Catalina Island is right 27 miles outside of Los Angeles in the Pacific Ocean. It's one of the largest of the chain of islands called the Channel Islands. When I'm on my upper deck, I can look out and see St. Nicholas Island from my upper deck. So
that's cool.
That's where I live. And we're in the process of rebuilding after the fire destroyed everything in 2018.
Oh, you were there in that path.
No, we lost everything, but I digress. So I contact Jim and I go, hey man, I read your book, Mysterious Catalina. You're talking about this guy, Ralph Glidden, who was a primitive archaeologist who was employed by the Hay, the Hay Museum. The Hay was later swallowed up by the Smithsonian. And he was out there from 1919 to 1921 conducting what could only be construed as very primitive archaeological digs for that period of time. A little more than a grave robber. I mean, they run the guy into the dirt. But he claimed to have found giant skeletons there. And interestingly enough, the barge, allegedly, that was packed with these large bones, sunk in the channel. Big storm came up and was never seen or heard of again. I'm not buying that either. So I get wind of, Jim calls me up a couple of months later and says, LA, they just discovered a cache of records that had gone missing for 50 years. It's Ralph Glidden's records that were discovered up in the attic of the Wrigley Theater, which is around, the museum used to be in the basement of the theater. So the curator for the museum would run the projector in the theater. It was part of his obligation at night, 2 or 3 times a week, right? So he's up there, and it's this huge attic. And he's running the film, so he's got nothing to do for an hour and a half. Already seen the movie 20 times. So he goes snooping around the attic, and he's finding all this stuff. He's the guy, John Borgina, that discovers this lost cache of records by the late archaeologist Ralph Glidden. This makes front page of the LA Times. This was amazing. So I immediately zone in on this thing, and I say, can I come out and look at the archives? No. Can I come out and look at the archives? No. Can I come out and look at the archives? No. And Jim Watson goes, LA, they're building a new museum. Why don't you offer a donation? Well, I'll give you $1,000 if you let me come out and snoop through the archives. Come right in, Mr. Marzulli. So I go out there, and I've spent, some time in the archives. I don't spend a lot of time. It depends what I'm looking for and where I am. I spent the first night I was there 3 or 4 hours. The second day, morning, I was there about 3 hours. But the first 20 minutes, we were finding pay dirt, which is rare. Usually don't find that. And I'm in there looking for giant skeletons, elongated skulls, 6 fingers. That's what I'm looking for. I find all that. They go, Borgina goes, what would you like to see first, LA? Send me the photographs. So he goes in and he takes a museum box, opens a museum box. Everything's filed, already been. It's not like I'm the first guy. This has all been sorted. Glidden files, Catalina. But I'm in there with a different lens. I'm looking for something. The people who filed this thing didn't know what they were looking at. So I go, oh my gosh, John, come here, look at this. How many fingers do you see here? He goes, oh my gosh, there's 6. I go, John, look at this. These are 2 elongated skulls in the grave. Looks like a mother and child buried together, and these skulls are elongated. He's flipping out.
Were these photos or?
Photographs, real photographs. 5x7 photographs, black and white. The pay dirt, which went viral,
No.
my intellectual property, the one I discovered, shows Ralph Glidden leaning on a shovel. In front of him is an open grave. Okay?
I saw that.
50 feet away from him, in situ, is a giant skeleton. The head, the skull is huge.
What?
So Gary Stearman said, we know, if you know the height of Ralph Glidden, you can give this to computer experts, and they can extrapolate where the camera was. They can just digitize the thing, which is what they did. I had 3 guys that volunteered to examine the photograph. There was no collusion between any of them until after each had given me the results. They all put the skeleton in the picture, because what they did is they took the picture and then they straightened up the skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
And they put it next to Ralph Glidden. Well, here's Ralph. Skeleton's like this. It's a 9-footer. That goes viral. Okay. So we go back. Richard Shaw, the producer, the director of our Watcher series. I was the co-producer. Richard directed. I was the host, and we did 10 films together. And he passed away a couple of years ago. Hard to believe, but we had a great romp together. And even though we parted company, we still had lunch once a week, and we're good friends till the very end. But we go back out to the museum. Borgina has been fired.
Oh,
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
We'll never know the real reason. And we walk in, and there in the museum wall is the picture that I discovered. Instead of a little 5x7, it's been blown up. It's like a foot high or 2 feet by 18 inches. It's huge. 2 feet wide, 18 inches tall. It's huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And underneath it, this whole hit piece on Ralph Glidden. And I mean, it's very disparaging to the legacy of Mr. Glidden. They basically call him a grave robber. What was interesting, we couldn't believe it. What was interesting was it shows Ralph on the shovel, but the skeleton that was laying in front of him has been cropped out of the picture.
So it just shows him on the shovel in this blown up picture.
Disparaging comments saying he was a grave robber, and then
and no giant in front of him.
Where was?
So we photographed that. That went flipping viral. People couldn't believe it. And this is why I have no faith in the scientific community for the most part, because this is the way the game is played. Now, you would think if anybody with half a marketing sense, come see the Catalina Giant, discovered by Ralph Glidden and proven by L.A. Marzulli. You'd have a line. I mean, that would be the attraction in that museum. The line would go around the block, right?
Yeah.
So they've now, to their credit, they have the picture. It's about 4 feet high, 3 feet wide. They've really blown it up. There it is, but they say nothing about what you're looking at. Not a word. about the fact, and this is the deal. I was on the History Channel in Search of Lost Giants, and they wanted just to have me give all that to them, and I said, "This is my intellectual property." Go do your own stinking research.
Yeah.
So they had me on the show, and I said, I'm gonna raise a stink here, unless you treat it fairly, and they treated it fairly. I mean, they did a good job with it. I would have done it differently, but they did a good job. That were fair, and basically, they allowed me to have my say. Of course, they completely backpedaled into the Darwinian theory, and all that, and that's fine. They can promulgate their paradigm till they're blue in the face, but I got to say what it was, that these are what we are looking at are the bones of the Nephilim, in my opinion. It's a 9-footer. What the heck is a 9-footer doing out on Catalina Island?
Oh,
yeah.
well, I'm flashing the picture up on right now for anybody watching, but the skeleton, for people listening, the skeleton, to explain this, he's standing there leaning on a shovel. There's a pickaxe next to him. It looks like there's a shaker tray up on the side, but down laying underneath him, like in front of and down beneath him, is a skeleton in a
like a fetal position.
Yeah, fetal position. And it's just its rib cage is the length of his leg. It is.
And look at the size of the skull on that.
Yeah,
the skull is enormous.
Yeah, the skull on that is very impressive.
Like a basketball or larger.
Very impressive. Now, could they have taken this picture, got the right angle, he stands 20 feet back, sure. But it doesn't appear to be that way, because there are equipment between him and the dig.
Yes, and we had 3 separate analysts take this, digitize everything, and they all put it 9'3", 9 feet, right around 9 feet. They all put it right around 9 feet. No collusion until after they had given me all their information.
And it's buried. It's buried in a particular way. It's got its arms, its hands are up on its shoulders. It's buried in a very particular way. So its hands aren't crossed. Its hands are up on its shoulders. So it's got its arms bent back, and it's in a fetal position. Look at the length of those forearms. Those forearms are they're longer than his femur.
It's, what? I mean, you would think, and remember, this is a photograph that never would have seen the light of day.
Yeah, if you hadn't taken a picture of it.
I got in there, and that was my picture that I took of the picture.
That's crazy.
That absolutely went viral.
Outstanding job.
I have a really bad name in academia, at labs. We can't get our DNA tested, which is discrimination. I probably should get a lawyer and lawyer up and go and bring suit to these people. I won't mention any names because I'll get them in trouble and get me in trouble.
Here's what I want you to do.
They won't do it.
That's
I want
crazy.
you to send some of that DNA off to 23andMe. And when you get the report back, you can it tells you, doesn't it tell you like relatives or something like that?
Close familial ties.
And then you'll know.
No, that's a really good idea.
You could do it very anonymously.
Yeah, you could get the 23andMe on the Nephilim and be able to find them. Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned the mound builders. We all know, well, those of us that have actually watched the series on the mound builders, they say that it was a Mississippian society and then it was the Hopewell or whatever. But
they ran out of wood, and so that's why they left, because they kept going to having to get farther to get their daily survival resources, their wood for their fires and everything else. And so they dispersed, and then from that story, you're supposed to believe that it's like that they dispersed and made up the different, and the different tribes grew out of that.
So who are the mound builders?
It's fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. If you watch Secrets of the Supernatural, Voices from the Other Side, we show it. We show actual testimony, actual stuff. that happened to people that are on the mounds. I mean, we've seen it. I've seen it. These are highly charged places. Again, we were looking at advanced mathematics, knowledge of the solar progression, 18 and a half year lunar cycle, and then there's connectivity between these sites and other sites that you can only do and triangulate from the air. Like in America, Stonehenge, 4,000 years old. This is the work of Kelsey Stone. He grew up there. So the grandfather bought it. Dennis Stone, took over. Now Kelsey's a 23-year-old college student, third generation. So he's grown up watching the summer solstice sunrise coming over this very large standing stone on the site. He knows that. He's grown up with it. But he's a college kid, and he goes on Google Earth, which wasn't there 20 or 30 years ago, right? And he says to himself, gee, I wonder if I, draw a line from the center of my hand out to the summer solstice standing stone, I wonder if it gets near my house. Well, it kind of passes close to his house. So he's just extending a line, and he's out over the Atlantic and goes by Nova Scotia. He finds himself in Ireland, and then he's in southern England. And at that point, he goes, gee, I'm in southern England. I wonder how close the line comes to Stonehenge. Maybe it's within, 100 miles. Wow, that'd be really cool. So he starts, dialing in the line to Stonehenge, England. And this is all in episode 4 and episode 5. We call it the Axis Mundi, episode 5. And he dials it in, and that line that goes from America, Stonehenge, out to the summer solstice standing stone, and then extends over across the Atlantic, splits directly in the center of the trilithon, which are two uprights and stone piece like this at Stonehenge, England. Not only once, but twice. There's the one, they're like at a slight angle like this. So it hits this one and it hits this one. It's not a coinkydink. To do that, you've got to triangulate in the air. In my opinion, Kelsey Stone, and he deserves an award. This is the most astounding archaeological find of the 21st century because he discovered it about 7-8 years ago. It is the most profound archaeological discovery that of this century, and maybe the last century, including King Tut, because what it shows is something else is going on here.
Sure.
There's something else that's going on. There is a hidden history which has been deliberately obfuscated by the people of the world.
So what do you think happened to the builders of the mounds?
Conjecture on my part, but there's precedent of it. They come in, they set up their shop, they're worshipped, they do their stuff, fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture, and then there's retaliation. And the proof text of this is when God says to Abraham, hey, I'm going to make you a great nation, but you're going to go down and be slaves in Egypt for 400 years until the sin of the Amorites comes into its fullness. The Amorites were a Nephilim tribe. Yeah, so you start connecting the dots, and it's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling.
Yeah, weren't the Amorites the first city builders there in the Crescent?
Yeah, I mean
they come out of the north, and this is just going off the history. The Amorites were the original city builders that then the Akkadians took over from, and then they kicked the Hittite. I'm digging deep into the back of my brain, digging
good
out
for
this.
You. Yeah, you know your stuff. That's great.
Yeah. But they were mountain folk, which mountain folk always tended to take over. I mean, you've got Cyrus the Great came over. He came over with a small tribe of mountain folk and took over all of Babylon. The Akkadians were mountain folk. Well, they were tall island folk, or not tall island, inlet folk. Yeah, that's so do you think maybe they were just coming down to maybe build temples? Because if they're building a place of worship, maybe it's just to subvert the worship.
Those aren't
Well, it
just
is.
temples, though.
They want to be worshipped.
Yeah.
These want to be worshipped. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I mean, and they are temples. I mean, if you compare
They
them
are.
to modern day temples, like we're here in Utah, we have a temple that's kind of famous, 30 miles east of us.
I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
been there.
And then you've got a temple in Italy, kind of famous. You know, you've got down in Cambodia. You've got yeah. So yeah, I mean, when you look at real temples, they're a complex. They're what they are is a dispensation of calories to prove your worthiness, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Look what we will do for who we worship.
So you mentioned that the Incas said that those particular structures were there when they got there. What did the Native Americans say about the mounds?
Same thing.
Same
You see
thing?
yeah, same thing. Native Americans at the Great Circle Mound, when the white settlers got into Ohio at the Great Circle Mound, the Othaka Mound, they went, well, who built all this? Native Americans go, First Nation people go, we don't know. It was just here when we got here. And what's hysterical, when we show this in the film, Mysterious Mound Builders, we show it where with Chief Joseph. So we're at the Great Serpent now, okay? And that's a time here. But
Isn't that in
Ohio?
it's in Ohio.
yeah,
Yeah.
in Ohio.
And so we're at the Great Serpent Mound, and all of a sudden Fritz Zimmerman goes, oh my gosh, there's new signage telling us that the Shawnee built the Serpent Mound.
Oh.
The Shawnee had nothing to do with this. So Chief Joseph, right? Chief Joseph Riverwind, who appears in several of our films, Chief Joseph quotes from Chief Wallace, the chief of the Shawnee, who comes on the record and says, no, the Shawnee did not build the Serpent Mound. It was here when we got here. We took care of it, and we, it was a sacred place to us, but we didn't build it. So here's the deal. So I'm called the racist because I'm saying that Native Americans didn't build this stuff, right? So I'm the racist. But the real racists are the archaeologists and the anthropologists who discount the Native First Nation people, their oral tradition that state, we didn't do this.
Yeah.
We didn't build it. And when you see Chief Riverwind talk about that, it's emotional because his eyes are smoldering, And this is what I mean. Everything is, if you study to be an archaeologist, you will come out an ardent Darwinist and you will toe the party line. And they look at someone like me, I'm not accredited, I'm not an archaeologist, but I've been there and I've read a whole lot and I've talked to numerous people and interviewed hundreds of people and read lots and lots and lots of books. So do I have a degree? No, I don't. But I can certainly think, and when I'm looking at stuff like this, like let's say the Great Serpent Mound, and this was a paper that I wrote. No one else on the planet had ever looked at the Serpent Mound through the lens of Genesis 3:15. And the only reason why that happened because Gary Stearman was at the Nephilim Mounds Conference in Newark, Ohio, talking about it's all about the seed. He's talking about Genesis 3:15. Well, Mark Hirschman, who's an amateur archaeologist, was just out at the Serpent Mound. And he came up to me and said, L.A., New Agers say that the serpent is giving birth to this egg. But after hearing Gary, no, the serpent is in the act of trying to swallow that egg, destroy that egg. Genesis 3:15 says, the seed of the serpent, the offspring of the serpent, the seed of the serpent, will be at war at enmity with the seed of the woman. The one coming from the seed of the woman will crush the dragon's head. The dragon will bruise his heel. Well, when you look at the Serpent Mound from the air, because when you're down on the ground, you don't know what you're looking at. But when you fly my drone 500 feet in the air, it's like, oh my gosh, the mouth of the serpent's like this, and there's the egg. It's Genesis 3:15 screaming at you, screaming at you. And guess who showed up there in 2012? Hunbat Men and the Mayan elders. And they're chanting.
Oh, yeah.
And they're trying to open up the gateway. They're trying to open up the gateway because that place was a place of human sacrifice, no doubt about it.
Now, with the thing on the Mayans, do you think the Mayans were just off a few years? Like maybe something got lost in translation?
Well, the Mayans and the whole deal there. I mean, we're talking at one of some of the most bloodthirsty cultures
Yeah.
ever gracing the planet. I mean, they've made some of the Babylonians and other people, they were pretty barbaric too. But I mean, these guys were wacky, and they've got this calendar. Well, where did it come from? This is what people don't get. It's coming from somewhere. And in the new film, Lost Civilizations, I'm down in Corral. And I look at the camera and I go, here I am standing in front of this largest pyramid. We're looking at advanced mathematics, knowledge of precession, equinoxes, solstices, knowledge of the 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. And I'll get into that in just a second. Building techniques, engineering techniques. I said, where do you think this come from? Did it just fall out of the sky? And then I kind of pause for effect and I go, or maybe that's precisely what did happen. It did fall out of the sky in the manifestation of a fallen angelic being who has all this knowledge and just begins to dispense it. Is worshipped as a god, and they build this incredible complex. In order to discover an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, so the three of us, we beamed down to Newark, Ohio. Okay? We just beamed down there. And we go, well, this is a pretty cool place. We're going to build a monument here. But I'm not sure about this moon thing. It keeps coming up, and it's a little different each day. And I go, yeah, maybe we should try to track it. And we all go, okay, how are we going to do that? Let's say 1,000 years ago. Well, I don't know. What we'll do is we'll take two sticks, and we'll put one stick here and one stick 50 feet away. And when the moon comes up, we'll sight the moon. We'll make a little notch on the stick. Yeah, it sounds pretty cool. And then we'll record it on deer hide. Yeah, all right. Pretty cool. So the first night we go up and we see the moon come up, and we got other sticks over here, and we trace the moon, and it went down on the hill. We mark it with a stake and make a little notch on the stake. Second night, the moon shifts a little bit, and we do this. We're getting pretty good. We got 16 days, and we got some notches, and we're getting our data. All of a sudden, the 5-day storm moves in. Can't see the moon. Have no idea what just happened. We got to start over again. How would you know? How would you track? How would you be able to crunch the data and even know that it's an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle? How would you study it? And we know from the book of Enoch, a pseudepigraphical book, which is quoted in the Hebrew Bible, Jude in the New Testament quotes directly from the book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We are told. That's why I think that it's such an important book. Everyone should read it. Is it part of the canon? Do with that. You can argue that till the cows come home. Just read the stinking thing. It talks about a fallen angel by the name of Sariel, who dispensed the knowledge of precession to human beings. They just gave it. They just gave it. We were handed this stuff, and that's why it shows up, and then it goes away.
So kind of like a Prometheus story.
Well, that's Prometheus. The Greek mythos is directly taken from the Nephilim. Hercules is a perfect example. They all
kind of match. All the mythos kind of they don't
Not
match,
a coincidence.
but there's a lot of similarities. There's a flood in all of them, and there's
famine and
So we know you got a heart out here real soon, but before I know Betsy has a question, but I want to ask, how'd you get into this? How did you?
This is the coolest stuff.
What's your classic, like?
You're living your best life.
I'm telling you, like, how did you start out? Whatever you were doing before.
Is it too late for us?
Yeah. How young were you? Can you start at say 45?
Yeah, I mean, I did actually. I read a book when I was 40, which changed my life. It was called The Omega Conspiracy by Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. And that book changed my life. He quoted the book of Enoch. He had the answers that I was looking for 10 years as a born-again, spirit-filled Christian, and couldn't find them. Didn't understand Noah's flood. Didn't understand why God confuses the language at the Tower of Babel. Had no clue. Why is he destroying Sodom and Gomorrah? Why the great flood? And then why kill everybody in the promised land? Who is this guy?
Right?
He's malicious. He's wacky. He's nuts. But because I didn't understand. I read Dr. Thomas's book on the Nephilim, because that's what it is, you plug that into the equation, and it's like the whole series of dominoes just go click, 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 click. So my first book was published by Zondervan. It was a novel. It was called Nephilim. It was based on the work of Dr. I.D.E. Thomas and the idea that they discovered the bones of the giants in this underground temple or underground room off the rabbinical tunnel underneath the temple.
So it was a novel you wrote?
Pure fiction. I wrote 3 novels. It's called the Nephilim Trilogy. All right?
I'd like to. I'm gonna have to check those out.
And then from there, it went into On the Trail, where I started visiting the sites like Peru, and that was it. And I owe that to Russ Dizdar, because I was at, and I got to get going here, but I'll close with this, that I was at a conference in Newark, and Russ Dizdar, my good friend, called up and he goes, hey, do you know where you are? Are you going tomorrow? Because I was in California. I'm getting ready to hop on a plane. Yeah, I'm going to Newark, Ohio. He just starts laughing. He goes, no, do you know where you're going? I go, Russ, I'm going to Newark. What are you talking about here? And he goes, Google Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley, the Nephilim Chronicles by Fritz Zimmerman. And I do, and I about fall out of my chair. So I'll end by saying this. That my driver was taking me from the hotel to the conference where I spoke 2 or 3 times that weekend. So on Sunday or on Saturday, I go, hey, have you ever heard about this Great Circle Mound? And he goes, yeah, you're about to pass it in about 2 minutes. We've been driving by it every day. I go, what? He goes, yeah. I go, well, look, I had the afternoon off tomorrow. Will you drop me off there? He goes, sure. So now it's Sunday. It's about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm done for the day. And he drops me off in the parking lot. There's not another car. There's nobody there. The site is abandoned. So there's this asphalt parking lot with an asphalt path, that gentle slope. You climb it, and to the right is a museum. To the left is the Great Circle Mound, and I realize this thing's really big. And I look at the museum, and then I turn, and I'm at the entrance to the Great Circle Mound. It's 1,250 feet in diameter. I freeze. I totally freeze in my tracks. I'm not moving a muscle. I'm hyperventilating. I'm like this. Hyperventilating. I'm afraid to move. And I'm looking with my eyes. And I'm realizing I am looking at the rest of my life.
This is it.
Those profound moments where this is the rest of your life. This is why you were born. This is your purpose. This is what you were here to do.
That's awesome.
To expose, and this is our mission statement, to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air, and to herald the return of the King Jesus. That's the mission statement. That's what we do.
That's very cool.
That
We
is.
will tag all of your books and
Thank you.
and everything, and
Yeah, we'll tag all your books, any
Thank you.
websites or anything you want us to tag.
I know
Hey,
Michelle
what's that?
sent them over to us, so
Mhm.
Very cool.
we'll add that
Live
to
long and
it.
prosper, guys.
Hey,
so
thanks for
cool
coming
to meet
on.
you.
When
Thank you
you're-
so much.
When your next book's done, if you want to come back on, or even if you just want to have Michelle let us know, we'd love to.
Well,
Plug
Lost
it.
Civilizations is
It's
about to be released.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we can talk about that.
Okay.
You know,
Perfect.
maybe in a month or something.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, just let us
Right.
know. Thank you
Awesome.
for coming
Guys.
on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great
God bless.
night.
Take
Yes,
care.
have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. Well, that was
Look, he's got.
a fun show. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
I know we didn't get to a lot of questions, and he's an extremely popular
he was a busy
interviewee.
guy.
He's
Yeah.
extremely busy, so he tries to keep his interviews to an hour. So
He had a heart out, and we wanted to honor that because we want him back on.
yeah, that was
Regardless of what you
swimming.
think, that is fun stuff. And the Nephilim is, since my childhood, has been one of my favorite subjects, fallen angels and all that.
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person, and I love it.
Yeah.
But thanks for joining us. We're going to go to the show notes. His books will be there, everything else. And, check his books
And
out.
if you want to watch, if you have Amazon Prime, there's actually On the Trail of the Nephilim is on Amazon Prime. You
Ooh.
get it with Prime Video, so
It looks like my next few days are
so you can go check it out.
occupied.
I know, but
occupido.
occupido. I don't think that's a
Yes.
word.
It's Jared Spanish. Anyways, thanks for joining us, everyone. You know, we will. I like this the tie into the red-headed giant because, of course, you know,
It's a little closer to home.
right above chasing Nephilim, I like Bigfoot.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
but thanks for joining us, and
Have a great week.
yes, have a great week. We'll see you guys very soon. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Yes.